let's see if Micah got it right. 5 plus 4 is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. 27 minus 3 is 24. So I can see that Micah has indeed got the, let me get this. So 5 plus 4 is 9. And then 9 times 3 is 27. And then 27 minus 3 is 24. So Micah, you got that one correct. And then the Zoom to everyone, 8 plus 4 is 12. So that's 12. And then 1 plus 1 is 2, and 12 times 2 is 24. And so that's our Maths 24 question done for the day. Okay, well done to everyone who did that. So let's start with the maths lesson now. So we've done the new student poll. So let's start with some basic warm-up activities for today's lesson. And what is this unit going to be about? The unit's about number patterns, but in order to kind of get going with that, what we need is I want everyone to complete the following. Let's move this down. We're going to complete this block here, and we're going to start by saying counting it by 8 from 8 to 80. So if I have to do that, I go 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 56, 64, 76, 80. So I'm counting by 8s. What I would like you to do now is I would like you to complete the next 4 for me. And it's an important activity that will prime your brain for today. So I will give you 4 minutes to do that. It is now 17:06 and at 17:10, all the answers for these 3 will be up on the board. And this is probably much the simplest, a very simple example of a number pattern question. So we start with this. So I see hands are up already. If I could ask you to put your question in the chat, and then Label will read out your question, or she will answer you. So if you are stuck, be aware Label will reply to you in the chat. The other thing, guys, if I could ask you to all please put yourselves on mute so we can use the chat. I see that there's a question from Lasedi in the chat. It says, someone said Mr. Peter is wrong on the first one. Let's have a look. Where is Mr. Peter wrong on the first one? I think count by 8 from 8. So I started 8. And then I go 16, 24, 32, 40, 48, 56, 64. Ah, I spot it, guys. I spot it. You're on fire. Well done. Okay. So do we have to write in a book or not? Yes. Okay. So guys, this is very important. When we sit down to do our maths with Watobe, we always have a book out. We have a piece of paper and we're sitting at a desk or a table where we can actively engage with the material. And when we then get our answers, now this first one, I'm not going to ask you to put it in the chat, but later questions, you are going to put stuff in the chat. But you must be writing down as you go. You must be actively engaging with what we're doing in order for you to learn. So I'm starting at 7 for the second one. Count by 3 from 7. So I'm starting at 7, and then the next one is 10, 13, okay, and so in this one, we were counting in 3s. Thank you for that question. So when solving problems, so Tato has a question. So Tato, this is just a warm-up activity. You will see the types of questions soon, but I just know from experience, students will really benefit from going through this activity first. So we're kind of making our own number pattern here, but the focus really is on where do we start and how much do we count up in. So in this one, we start at 4. And in this one, we start at 1. So when we have a number pattern, it's really important where we start and we get that sorted out properly. Okay, Ayanda's got answers coming through. It's looking good. Cool. So I was reading a study recently about how if students are active, even if they make a mistake, as long as students are being active in the process, it helps their brains kind of sort things out over time and ultimately learn better. So you must be participating in something. I hear someone not on mute. If you could just pop yourself onto mute, guys, that would be awesome. There will be time for questions, I promise. So I'm going to add a few more now. Well, I'm going to add one more. This is a very good exercise. Notice how you need to know your times tables. So count by 6 from 1. So 7. Okay, so this is such a good exercise. I'm actually going to ask you to do up to number 9. And as we go, I just want to see that you are, yeah. So let's keep going on to number 9. Well done, Amandla. I'm sorry to sneak out, but I just want you to do, let's do all the way up to number 9. Because if we get this, it's going to help us build a foundation for the rest of the lesson. You'll notice, though, that knowing your times tables is also very important. So ask yourself first, where am I starting from and how much am I going up in? From 3 in this one. Lebo, is there anything in the chat that I need to be aware of?
Not at the moment, no questions yet.
So it says, one of the students says, I can't hear, so my sound doesn't want to work. So what should I do? Maybe Lebo will reply to you now. Normally leaving and coming back can also be very helpful. Mm-hmm. Guys, you're doing so well. I can see all the answers coming through on the chat. And even the people who aren't answering in the chat, as long as you're doing it, it's going to get us into a nice place for the rest of the lesson. So we start with a 3 here, a 4 here.
Hi, sir.
Mr. S, we have Faith trying to ask a question here.
Okay, go ahead.
Faith?
Sir? Yeah.
Hi, sir, I can understand, sir.
Okay, I can't quite hear you there, Faith.
I don't understand, sir.
Okay, but which question are you on?
6, sir.
Sorry?
6.
6, okay.
Yes, sir.
Let's look at 6. So if we go for 6, we must first start at 4. And then we ask ourselves, how much are we going up by? Well, we're counting in 2s. So 4 plus 2 is 6. Then it's 8, 10. So each time I'm just adding 2 each time.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Pleasure. So an important thing with the number patterns is, where do I start and how much do I go up or down by? At the moment, we're just going up. Okay, so we're going to start 3, start from 8, start from 7. Okay, I will give you 3 more minutes for this. and then we can probably get going.
Mr. S, we have a question from Pumzile.
Okay, go ahead, Pumzile.
So, evening, I just wanted to ask at number 8,
Yes.
do we start from 8 and add 14 to go to 44?
So we start at 8 and we count by 4. So if I go 8 and I add 4, I get 12. And then I add 4 more and I get 16. So we're essentially counting in 4s.
Until I get to 44.
Yes. Yeah. So you'll notice in all these questions, the 22, like we're counting up to that number at the end.
Thanks, sir.
Okay. Pleasure. Okay, nicely done, Kendra. Nicely done. Now, while we wait for those who are finished, I want you to think about if I had to describe this pattern, and that you don't have to answer me yet, but I just want you to start thinking about it. I've shown you 9 different number patterns. If you had to describe these number patterns, what language would you use to describe them? And I just want you to think, what have I heard about before? What do you think might be involved? And I'm going to come back to you in a minute or two once I've given a bit more time for everyone to finish. Okay, so Kendra and Yanda, I want you to think about that for a little bit. So count by 7 from 3. So if I'm counting by 7, I'm going to go 10. Oh, let me get a thinner curve. So 10. So I'm starting at 3, counting by 7. So 24, 31, 38, 54. Oh, have I made a silly mistake? 38, 45, 52, 59, and 66. Notice how the last one here, I know I've got it correct because of that. And then for this one, like that. And then this one, I start at 7, I count by 6, I get 13, 19, 43, 49, 55, 61. Okay, now I know that I took a bit of time with that, but it's really important that if you deal with number patterns, you need to learn how to count out in amounts. And so if you struggle with times tables and these types of things, you need to slow yourself down in order to work with that. Now, what do you think? I asked a question a moment ago, and I want people to respond in the chat. If you want to describe number patterns, one of the ways of describing them is with words. And I just, in this first one, I said, count by 1 from 3 to 12. So that's using words to describe a number pattern. But what do we normally use to describe number patterns in mathematics? We sometimes use words. And I want to see in the chat, what do you think? There's more than one way to describe this. But I'd like to see in the chat, what do you think we're going to use to describe these patterns going forward? Number patterns, okay. And what language, what are some of the words that come out? The general term, I see people are talking about the general term, that's, yep, letters, yep. Sometimes we might use things called variables. Have you guys heard of the position number and the term number? So when we now begin to talk about number patterns, we need to develop our own vocabulary that allows us to describe these patterns. And sometimes patterns can carry on. So say, for example, pattern number 9. I don't think this pattern is completely finished. I think I could get another pattern. What would the next pattern be? What would the next term be in this number pattern? If I asked you for the one that's missing over here. I'll wait for a moment in the chat. What do you think the next one is going to be? Okay, it's going to be 67. Now, how did you know that? Well, you knew the rule that you had to add 6 each time. Now, some other vocabulary that we use with terms is we talk about the position in a number. So if I look at, for example, here, if I look at this would be position number 1 over here. So that would be position number 1. And sometimes we call it N1. Then this would be position number 2, position number 3, and so on. And the value of position 1 is 7. The value of position 3 is 19. Okay, so we're going to get around that vocabulary in a moment, but let's just do this. Okay, so I'm going to show you an example here. It says here is a linear sequence, 3, 5, 7, and 9. It says the step size is 2. Okay, the reason the step size is 2, to go from 3 to 5, we add 2. The first term is 3. The fourth term is 9. The fifth term is 11. And then it says the 10th term will be 21. Okay, so now if we think about how do we get to 21, we need to go. And so now we can see if we count that out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So the fifth term will be 11. And the 10th term will be 21. So as we start today, I want you to make very clear in your brain the idea of the position number and then the term value. Okay, let's start with 2 questions like this. So, okay, well, I think what I see somebody says they're lost. Let's try and do this one. Try and do number 1 for me. And for those who are really feeling on fire, you can do number 2. Ask yourself, what is the step size? What's the first term in this number sequence? What's the 4th? What's the 5th? What's the 10th? And for those who are on fire, you can do number 2. Give it a go. So for those who are feeling like they need support, the step size in the first one is 3, because I'm adding 3s. And sometimes people will call the step size the constant difference. The first term is going to be 2. Okay, I don't want to give you more of a hint than that. But see if that gets you going. Guys, give me a thumbs up if you feel like you are getting this. Give me a thumbs down if you feel like this is a bit overwhelming.
Mr. S, we have Sichumiso and iPhone 2 saying that they are lost.
Okay, let me go through number 1 in a bit more detail. If we look at the number patterns, this is term. Okay, so in order to, what is the very first term? The very first term is this 2, because it's in position number 1. In order to get from position number 1 to position number 2, what do I do? In fact, in order to hop along, each time I'm adding 3. This is what we call the step size. If I want the 4th term, I need to go to the 4th item in the list, which in this case is going to be 11. The 5th term, they don't give it to you, but if you follow the rule of adding 3 each time, I think this is going to be 14. Okay, but now it gets a little bit trickier because I can't just say the 10th term will be 17. I need to count a bit more than that. In fact, I need 5 more items. So what is the 10th term going to be? And then for those who are comfortable, you can do the next one that's next door. So I think what we need to do is we just need to keep on going. How many by that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So if I count out the 10th term will have a value of 29. Yeah. I think that seems reasonable. Now let's see if you can follow that same idea in the second one. And while we do that, I'm just going to grab one from below so that those who feel like they need a bit more. Okay. So we're going to do these 4 and then we will stop for a break. But I want to finish these 4 before we have any sort of breaks or take any questions. Now, while you are working on these 4, it's a great time to grab any questions. And so, Lebo, if there are any questions, if there's a question that comes up a lot, then I would love to kind of get a summary of that. Otherwise, students can just work on these 4 questions.
There is a question from Kyle.
Okay, go ahead, Kyle.
I don't think Kyle is connected via audio.
Okay.
So
No
there's
problem.
one from Kanisile.
Can you see it? You want to go ahead?
Yeah.
Also, I was gonna ask if you could move up to number 2, but it's fine now. Thank you.
You can see it. Perfect. Perfect. Okay, so the real goal is just to get comfortable with the language here. So the 4th term is 10. What's the 5th term going to be? So it looks to me like it's going to be, okay, I have to keep counting now. 14, 16.
Mr. Ace, we have a question
Yeah.
from Tibofatso.
Go ahead.
Say I'm confused in number 1 because like
Yeah.
it says the 10th
Oh, it's not-
term will be 2.
So it's not going to be 2. Sorry, that got rubbed out. So if you look at where we're going up in 3s, so it would be 17, 20, 23, 26, 29. And so the 2 was just the first part there. Okay. First term is 2. And 14. And then. So what you'll notice is whenever I have to get to like a big number like 10, there's not really a quick way at the moment for me to do that. I kind of have to just count out by the step size. So we've got 6 numbers. Now we're going to go 7, 8, 9. Am I going right here? 2, 8, 11, 14. So that's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So the 10th term will be 29 here. And then the next one here, it's going up in 4s. So the step size is 4. First term is 5. 4th term, if I count 1, 2, 3, 4, is going to be 17. To get the 5th term, I'm going to have to get 21. And then the 10th term, oh my goodness, there's so much work to do. I've got to go 25, 29, 33, 37, 41. Let's see if I've done this right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, now I just want to get a feel for the class because I know that I'm deliberately making this a little bit frustrating because when I show you how to work out a formula, you're going to see the magic of formulas. But I just want to see, do give me a thumbs up if you feel comfortable working these out. Give a thumbs down if you don't feel comfortable working these types of questions out. Because you need to have mastered this in order to go to the next type of question. And so if necessary, we can do 2 more like this. But I just want to check from the audience. And then Lebo, if you could just keep an eye on the thumbs up and down.
We have quite a couple of thumbs up.
Okay, let's just do 1 more of these, and then I promise we can move on. So here is a linear sequence, and I want everyone to complete this, and then we're going to take a quick break. And then after that, we are going to go on to formulas.
Mr. S, we have a, oh, okay. He lowered his hand. There was a question, but yeah.
Okay. So in order to find the step size, one of the things that I haven't spoken about, but you can do, is if you see you're always adding the same thing, one of the ways of finding it, I suppose, is just to go like that, although it's kind of obvious, I guess. So the step size is 6, the first term is 7, and then the 4th term is 25. What's the 5th term going to be? I guess I only have 4 on my list, so I have to add. And so that should be 31. And the 10th term, oh my goodness. Okay, so now, so let's carry on counting. So we have 37, 43, 49, 55, 61. 2, 3, 4, 5. And so the 10th term, I'm hoping we'll see in the chat that most students are getting 61. Yes, well done. Okay. Yes. Fantastic. Okay, so what I see is the majority of students are comfortable with this idea of moving down a list. We talk about the position in the list, and we talk about the value of the item in the list. So the 10th term is the 10th item in the number pattern, but its value is not 10, its value is 61. Okay, fantastic. This is great. So let our brains digest this, and let's just take a moment to step away from our desks and our tables. We want our brain to have a quick break now. And so if I could ask everyone to step away from their tables. Now, remember at the beginning of the lesson, I said to you, you need to be sitting with a pen, with your book. You need to be focusing. Now I want you to let all of that go. And I want you to just stand up, and I want you to go and find a pen. And when we've been concentrating, we need our brains to have a break every so often. And so I want everyone to, if you can, put your video camera on. And I want you to take a pen, and I want you to take your non-dominant hand. So I'm a right-handed person, therefore I've got it in my left hand. And I want you to take it on the end with the lid. And I want you to see, can you toss this so it spins in the air once, and you catch it on the same end? And it's surprisingly difficult. And let's just see how natural it feels. Give it a go. I'll try as well. Okay, not too bad. Lebo, how are you getting at this? You've had a couple of chances to practice. Are you feeling more comfortable?
A little bit.
It's funny how it's still difficult, eh? Especially
yes.
Okay. Now, after you've done a couple with your weaker hand, switch to your stronger hand and see if it's any easier. See if it's any easier. No. Okay, so you're in your right hand. Can you see how you want to spin it more? Okay. And try.
It's much harder with my left.
It's fun because your brain kind of predicts, and it kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's have a quick look. Who's the champion at this before we move on? Mercedes looks like he's had quite a bit of practice. Peter, what's going on? I don't see no pens yet.
Fidel also looks like he's been practicing.
He's been practicing. Yeah, this is a special skill.
Yeah.
All right, let's get back to what we were doing. Now, everyone, the second part of the lesson is going to be about formulas. So how do we, if we look at, let me move these out the way. If I want to build, did you notice how in the first part of the lesson, if I wanted to get to the 10th term, it took me a really, really long time. And I'm sure that, some of you may have seen this in class, some of you may not, but there actually is a quicker way to describe the number pattern. And if we learn how to describe it using something, a formula, it makes it much easier to work out the 12th term in the list or the 15th term in the list and so on. So what I want to do first, though, is give some language for each of these things. So, and I'm actually going to draw a little table here to just kind of help you understand what I'm talking about. So in the first part of the lesson, I talked about the position number. So I'm going to call that N, okay, for position number. And we called the value of the item in the list, we called that a term. So we'll call that T. And you probably have seen this before, but sometimes it gets, a bit quick in class. So if I had to say position number 1, position number 2, position number 3, position number 4, it corresponds to this thing over here. And the value of position number 4 is going to be, the value of position number 1 is going to be 4. The value of position 2 is going to be 6. The value of position 3 is going to be 8. The value of position 4 is going to be 10. So give me a thumbs up if that idea makes a little bit of sense to you, that you know what I'm talking about. There's N, which is the position number, and T, which is the term value. Give me a thumbs up if it makes sense. Give me a thumbs down if you've never heard that before. Okay. So ultimately, what we need to do, sometimes in class, instead of calling this T, they sometimes call it TN. I'll be back in a moment, guys. I'm going to close my window. There was just something going on outside. Okay, so sometimes instead of it being T, we call it TN. And the challenge of building a formula is to build a relationship between this thing called TN and N. Okay, so that's what we have to do. Okay, so this is what I'd start by doing. I start by writing the N, which is the position number, and then I look for the step size. So let's actually do this first thing up here. In this question, the first term is 4 and the step size is 2. Okay, what we're then going to do is we are then going to write the step size number in front of the position number. Okay, so step size number, which is this thing over here, goes in front of the position number. And now what we have to do is we have to ask ourselves, does the statement, is it true? If I had to make N1, so if I made N1 position 1, does 1 times 2 give me the value of the first term? So does it give me at the moment? If I take 1, position 1, and I put it into this formula, does it give me the value of term number 1? Yes or no? So I'll wait. Okay. Okay. So the reason it doesn't give me what I want is if I take 2 and I times it by 1, I get 2. But that's not what I actually wanted. I wanted to get 4. And so the second step in balancing this is to go, what do I need to add in order to get the value of the first term? And so in order to get to the value of the first term, I need to add 2 more. Now we can check, does this formula actually work? So this formula, if I put 1 in now, 2 times 1 plus 2 gives me 4. I'm going to explain again now. Don't worry, this is the first time I'm doing it. So I think of it as the step size, and then I think about this thing as the balancing part. So all I did was I said, how short am I of getting to 4? If I have 2 times 1, I get 2. I still need to add 2 more to that 2 to get to 4. And so that's how I built my formula. Now I'm going to do another example in a moment, but let's just check this formula actually makes sense. So at the moment, T1 is 2 times 1 plus 2, which is 4. But what happens if I put a 2 in there? Let's use my formula now. 2 times 2, and then I leave plus 2, that gives me 6. That's good news because the second value was 6 over here. And then let's just make sure that my formula definitely works. T3, or term number 3, I'm going to go 2 times 3 plus 2, and that should give me 8. Now, it's quite a complicated idea the first time you see this, but I want you to try and do number 8, just mimicking what I just did. So the answer for number 7, the formula for the first term or for the general term is going to be this. I want you to see, can you try and take what I did here and go very slowly and see if you can do the same thing for number 8, but just adjusting it a little bit to take into account what I did. So if you need to, you can even start by drawing a little table. To start, what is your step size? What's your first term? And see what you can do. Okay. Now, lady, start with asking yourself, do you know what the step size is? If you do, put it in the chat. If you think back to the beginning of the lesson, what did it mean if you had to, yeah. Okay, so the step size is plus 4. If we looked at the first term, which I'm going to call, we use the first term to balance everything. The first term is going to be 5. If we want, what we can do, some people will do this. So think about it. But you don't have to do this because you can see the pattern after a while. For the example above, position number, how many? We've got 4 items. And the first one is 5. The second one is 9. Then it's 13. Then it's 17. These are the 2 characters that are involved. There's N and TN. And what I said was, start by doing this. And write down the step size in front of the N, in front of the position number. So what was my step size? It's going to be 4. Okay. In Plato, you can do it another way. I'll show you in a moment how to go straight there without the table. But I just think initially it's nice to see the table. Okay, for those who are lost, don't worry. I'm going to do a couple more of these examples. This is the only new thing we're going to do today. Now, the second problem we have now is if we just stopped now in this question, we need to get, okay, to 5. Okay, so we need to get to 5. At the moment, if we put 1 in here, what do we end up getting? We end up getting 4 times 1 is 4. Now, how much short, if we've got 4 and we need to get to 5, how much short are we? Or how much are we kind of short of what we need? I think we're 1 short because we needed to get 5 and we've ended up with 4. So the final answer is going to be 4n plus 1. That's going to be the formula that describes this. And let's just check that this actually makes sense. So if I put a 1 in there, let me actually get rid of some of this. And then I'll just show you that what I'm doing does actually work out. But we need to practice this more too. Using the formula down here, if I put a 1 in, 4 times 1 plus 1 is 5. What is, if I put a 2 into my formula, 4 times 2 plus 1 is going to be 9. So the good news is that my formula does seem to be working at this stage. What we need to practice is making sure we know how we do it. And I think possibly I should give another example, which maybe without the table there. So let me do another one a bit like that. Let me just get rid of this. And then for those who are feeling completely comfortable with this, I want you to do 9 and 10 by yourself, and you can even do 11 and 12, which is on the right-hand side. For those who are feeling very stuck, I'm going to go through this from the very beginning now, and I'm going to simplify it even further. So there's 3 steps. Step 1 is getting the information. Step 2 is writing out the beginning of the formula. And step 3 is just balancing the formula. So there's 3 steps. Put here. There's info. There's, I'll say step size. And there's balance. I sound a bit like the Karate Kid or something. Anyway, so those are the 3 steps. Okay, so first step 1 is get the info. The step is, in this case, in question 9, going up in 5s. So the step size is 5. The first term is 3. How do I know it's 3? Because this thing starts with 3. And now I need to then work out the formula for this thing now. So I'm not even going to worry about the info I've got. It's above. Now I'm going to start by building my formula and putting in the step size. So when I build the formula on the one side, and this is somewhat a bit of memorization, I'm going to start with Tn and n. Well, remember, n is the position and Tn is the value. Some students are saying they can't see. Can you see, Lebo?
Yes, I can see. I'm not really sure what they're referring to.
You mean zoom in a little bit? Okay. Now, with the step size, and the reason the step has to go here is this is what's counting up in 5s. So we put a 5 there. But now we have a problem because we need to bring balance to the force. If I leave my formula like this, if I start to apply it, let's see what will happen. This formula says term number 1 is 5 times 1, which is 5. Then it says term number 2, 5 times 2 is 10. Am I describing the right formula? No. Something has gone pear-shaped, if I'm polite, because I'm not giving you the formula that I started with. So what I forgot to do was I forgot to bring the balance. So you ask yourself, okay, how far away was I from being in balance? At the moment, my first term, if I make n1, my first term will be 5, and I'd like it to be 3. So what I forgot to do is to just take away 2. And so my answer should have been, the formula should have been Tn is 5n minus 2. Let's see if I've done any better now. T1 5 times 1 minus 2 gives me 3. T2, 5 times 2 minus 2 gives me 8. T3, 5 times 3 minus 2. Okay, the good news, guys, is I found my formula. So what is the summary of today's lesson? Because we're not quite done, but we're getting towards the end. First of all, number patterns have positions and they have values. The positions come from the n number. We use the number n to talk about the position. We use the number tn to talk about the term value. We also talk about something called a step size or a constant difference. Now, when we want to not have to write out, okay, so the one thing I haven't showed you is earlier in the lesson, let me just do this before I sum up the lesson. If I asked you for the 10th term in the list, earlier in the lesson, I had to count out everything 10 times, or I had to count it out. Whereas if I want the 10th term using a formula, the good news is I just put 10 where the n is. So for example, the 10th item in number 9's list is just going to be 48. Look how wonderfully quick that was. I didn't have to write out 23, 28, and all that stuff. Now, guys, I can see a lot of you aren't completely comfortable yet. And so I'm going to do this one more time, but also know that at the beginning of the next lesson, I'm going to go through this again. And so you need a bit more practice of this, and that's fine. That's part of what we're here to do. So let me finish the lesson with just one more example like this. And then for those who are feeling comfortable, I'm happy for you, once you've done 11 and 12, I'm happy for you then to finish the lesson off for today. So let's just try one more time. So in question 11, this is the number pattern that I'm trying to describe. The step size is going up in 5s. Oh, sorry, things are. So step size is 5. The first term is 2. Okay, so let's start. Remember, what are the two characters that are always involved? There's Tn and n. And we always seem to use the step size. Now, I think you'll be able to see quite quickly this doesn't fit. At the moment, my formula says that term number 1 is 5, but that's not true. Term number 1 is 2. So what do I need to do to get from 5 to 2? I need to balance it, and I balance by taking away 3. And so the formula is going to be Tn equals 5n minus 3. This is the formula that describes this number sequence or number pattern. And I can see it's right by subbing in values. Okay, yes, Carl, question.
Kyle, please make sure your audio is connected on your computer.
Yeah. All right, guys, I have to go to my grade 11 class, but I think we actually did quite a lot today. And if you feel like you're overwhelmed, what I want to suggest is that you look at the recording of this before the next lesson. We are going to start the next lesson with practicing this out. And today's goal was just to get you familiar with the language of number patterns and how to build a basic formula for a linear sequence. The next lesson will be on Wednesday. Okay, I'm going to pop out because of my grade 11s, but Lebo, if you could just take any bits and pieces questions. It was great being with you guys today, and I hope that you have a wonderful rest of Monday.
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks, Lebo. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, Lebo. Can we do the poll, the pace? We need to do
yes.
Goodbye.
Can you just, guys, before you go, can you do our poll, please? We want the poll for the pacing. And then Lebo, if you could just pop that in the chat at the end, that would be, Slack.
Okay.